and this is the Agegroup Multisport Podcast with me, Richard Conway. This is a platform for Agegroup Multisport athletes to showcase their journeys.
Yeah, I got to the start line, and this is, we were talking at the beginning about imposter syndrome, and that was I very nearly didn't even make that start line. 2 weeks before, I was in complete crisis of who am I to think that I should be going here? How dare I even prepare?
And that was today's guest, Andy Holladay. Andy reached out and said he'd love to come on the podcast and share his story and talk a little bit about mental health and the experiences that he's had before and during races. Fascinating subject. Previously, we've had 3 sports psychologists on the pod that have all delved into psychology of our sport. Dr. Pippa Jane, she was on episode 26, 27 and 28. Dr. Jim Taylor, he was on episode 60. And sports psychologist Natasha Lazarev was the most recent we had on episode 102. It is a fascinating subject. It's not something that I've really struggled with myself, from a panic attack or from an imposter syndrome. I've always just been glad to be there. But I know that even during races, I've had to give myself a talking to carry on sometimes. Everybody hits that, I guess, the wall, and you've just got to get through it and carry on and finish. But sometimes it's not as easy as that, and Andy talks us through his experiences. So he's got a really good story. Interesting topic, not one that I said to Andy, not one that we've discussed with athletes very much. So we've had the professionals on, but never really had an athlete come on and be willing to share their experiences in this side of the sport, really. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. Really, really good and thought-provoking chat. So we're recording this in between Christmas and New Year, and hope you had a good Christmas, and I hope you're all set for the new year. Weather's been pretty kind, so we've been able to get out and do a few bits and pieces, although having said that, I've just started a training plan on Zwift, which is a build me up 12-week plan. So I've been spending the majority of cycling on there, and the track was closed last Saturday, so we ended up inside again on the treadmill. But New Year's Day, we've got a 10k plan. There's a few of us from the club, and we're all going to go and run that. It's not going to be a race. It's going to be nice and steady. And just enjoy the experience and start the year off well. Just another reminder that we have been nominated for an award with the Sports Podcast Awards in our category, which is the Health and Wellbeing category. So I'm going to put a link at the bottom of the show notes, or you'd probably see the link in our social media. I've put them on there, and I'll continue to do so. I don't want to, like I said to Andy in the podcast, I don't want to swamp everybody, but it would be much appreciated if you could head over to the website and give us your vote. Tough competition in our category. We're up against Jake Humphreys and the High Performance Podcast. It's a really, really good show, actually. I listen to it quite a lot. He's got some great guests on, and Jake Humphreys is a television professional, and his podcast is really cool. So yeah, so that's who we're up against. And but anyway, if you could give us your vote, it'll go towards seeing what we can do against the big boys. As we've been on holiday, I haven't really done much podcast listening, to be honest, so I haven't got any recommendations on this episode. I've been watching the cyclocross because there isn't much sport on the TV either, but the cyclocross has been on, and Mathieu van der Poel has come back and he's won 5 out of 5 races. Just been completely dominant, and Wout van Aert came back for one race, and it was nice to see them both racing against each other. That was a pretty good event, but still the ladies is the best racing to watch. Some great characters in there, so if you haven't watched any cyclocross, head across to Eurosport and give it a watch. Really worthwhile, really fun to watch. Right, it's time for the main event, and hope you enjoy Andy's story, and we shall see you on the other side. So, hello, Andy, and how are you today, and where are you, more importantly?
Where am I? I'm just outside Leavening. I'm in Leavening, just outside York.
Right.
I'm working at home, and I'm good today. Good. Yeah.
Good. What have you been up to? Any training?
Started off with a recovery swim, which was probably a bit harder than a recovery swim, but that's fine. It was fine. And then just doing some work this afternoon, really.
Yeah. So, cool. Yeah. Good. So is it just base training now for the winter?
Yeah, just kind of building up through to start thinking about next season. I've got some big goals next season. Yeah. So it's kind of looking at those and doing a lot of kind of FTP work on the bike at the moment.
Excellent.
I'm not a big fan of just base training just for the sake of base training. It's like...
Yeah, but in a way, it's giving your body a bit of a rest as well, isn't it, from the season? Yeah. People dwell on it being base training and they should be doing so much, but that's the way I look at it. Yeah, you're still training and
and as you get older, that recovery becomes more and more important.
Absolutely vital. Absolutely vital. Yeah. This chat. Yeah. I know you were in your email. You were talking about wanting to discuss a little bit about imposter syndrome and the mental side, the mental game.
yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of it's big important to me. It's part of the work that I do outside of triathlon is around that, but it is just something that has featured so massively in my triathlon career, both in good ways and bad ways. And when you're on it, you know it, and when you're not, it can just be an absolute minefield.
Yeah. Well, it isn't something. I mean, I did have a sports psychologist on, and we did talk about that in some detail. But it isn't something that comes up with the general age groupers, really. And it does affect everybody. It certainly affects. In fact, I raced yesterday and it affected me. Coming off the bike, the second run, I was like having to give myself a right good talking to.
Yeah, and it can get you at any point and just completely derail an event or make it. So
so I look forward to having a bit of a conversation about that. That'll be good.
How did you get on yesterday?
Well, I've only raced twice this year due to injury, so it was something I just put in to do. It was an off-road duathlon at
Sherwood Pines.
Yeah. And it was really good. And I did good. I did for me. You can only be where you're at, I always say. And I'd set myself 3 goals of what I want to do, and I hit them all. So that's I wasn't ripping up any trees. I was never going to win anything, but you've got to be realistic and I think as long as you set some goals in each race, doesn't matter how small they are. It doesn't have to be a win, doesn't have to be a place, doesn't have to be a time. But if you
and I think sometimes if you can get away from that setting, it's got to be this place or this time or this position or whatever. Actually, if you go, I want my transitions to be really smooth, or I want to do, ride at this maintain power, even power or something, it becomes more, it's less black and white failure and success, and it becomes actually this is stuff that I can do, and I can do stuff about. So
well, one of mine was nailing my bike mount, flying bike mount, And I put a video up actually on YouTube, and I absolutely bang nailed it. But I've been practicing it, over
Yeah,
because there's not more. I couldn't run. That was the problem this year. So I've been doing a lot of practice on the bike and stuff. And yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. My wife fortunately filmed it.
perfect.
So it was, I absolutely nailed it. So
Yeah,
put it on Instagram, and I was that proud. Put it on Instagram and YouTube today. So thank you once again for taking your time out and agreeing to come on and share your story. Much appreciated, because obviously without guys like you, this podcast wouldn't exist. So really do appreciate it. So thank you for
yeah,
that. And if you'd just like to introduce yourself, yeah,
yeah. So I'm Andy Holladay, age group duathlete and triathlete, living up in York. Been competing for just over 5 years in the age group team, with COVID interruptions in the middle of it.
yeah, everybody has that,
Yeah,
that starts off
yeah,
prior to 2018. It's like, I'll just get started, and then it all
yeah.
sort of stopped.
Well, that was exactly it. I qualified, and then it was postponed and postponed,
Yeah,
and finally raced in 21. I think it was the first one out of
yeah,
VS. So yeah.
cool. So what did you do growing up as a kid?
So I grew up initially in Exeter and then in Bristol, and was kind of doing all the usual school sports, cricket, rugby, football. But the kind of bit that was closest to me, or the bit that I was probably best at, was the cross country running, um, which featured, but again, never really any success, not county level or anything. Just kind of did okay,
Yeah.
got on with it at school, did okay, was kind of front middle of the pack. But yeah, it was that there was never any ambition to do sport or focus on that, kick a ball around with mates and things. But yeah, it was
Just
fairly
a
low
general
key.
child up growing, growing up.
Yeah. I mean, I went to an independent school, and they were big on sport, so
Yeah,
we took part in the sports, but there was nothing that I ever really shone at that
yeah,
they went, wow, you're amazing. As I say, cross country running was probably where I was the best,
yeah,
at it, and certainly the bit I enjoyed the most.
yeah.
Probably because it got away from the structure of pitches and all of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So once you'd left school, then how did the sporting continue?
So then it was, I got into mountain biking when mountain biking first started coming out. It was like fully rigid mountain bikes and razzing around the woods at Bristol, and then competed in a couple of local mountain bike events. Discovered I was stubborn, but not good. So I competed. I remember competing in one event and coming in dead last. And they were dismantling the finishing structures as I came in. I was that far back, but there was no way on earth I was not going to finish it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it was mountain biking, and then there was a group of us that were quite into that and decided we wanted to get fitter and faster, and kind of the road bike was the obvious thing to do at that. So we all bought road bikes and started road biking a little bit.
What age were you there, Andy?
So that was early 20s, really.
Right.
So kind of after school, there was the usual break from sport, not the usual, but there was a break from
Yeah,
sport where
yeah,
I pursued other activities, motorbikes and beer and things like that. And then yeah, drifted back in, like just started mountain biking just for a bit of a laugh, something to do. As I say, got into it and then started to get a bit more competitive. And then there was a time trial, started to discover time trials. And then I stopped again for a while. That kind of went on for 2 or 3 years. And then I stopped and thought, yeah, I'm not really doing anything with this. Followed my career and started doing, got into the outdoors. So I was doing climbing and kayaking and moved up to the Lake District.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was a
Yeah,
fantastic job. And yeah, taking people out, working at one of the development centres there and working with young people at risk. And
ideal job.
It was fabulous, yeah. I mean, there were times where you found yourself on the hills in the worst weather, but there were also times where you found yourself on the hills in the best weather going, I'm being paid for this, so hey, I can't complain. And while I was doing that, I got back into cycling, and then there was quite an active time trial scene there, and got really into that and started getting not amazing results, but reasonable results. Sub hour for the 25 and just knocking 22 minutes, I think, for the 10. So reasonably quick. And then, from there, a lot of people got back into mountain biking because I lived right in the middle of the Lake District. So why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. It's perfect, isn't it?
And then kind of drifted into adventure racing, which was, that kind of multi-sport adventure racing. And that was probably my first multi-sport experiences.
So what did that entail?
So they were usually 1 day or 2 day events where you had orienteering, fell running, mountain biking, kayaking, and it was kind of a sequential. It was either a journey from one place to another, and you went from one bit and then got down and started kayaking, and then kayaked to the next point, and then ran to the next point, or they were a series of short stages. In fairly rural areas, mountain, I can't remember what it's called now, the mountain bike orienteering as well. I started doing that. So that was kind of the first multi-sport experiences that I had. And loved it, really enjoyed it, did that for a couple of years. And then my brother, so it's all his fault, really. My brother, a bit of competitive brothers thing. My brother started doing triathlons, and my brother's he loves to push the limits of stuff straight away. It's like no way was he going to ease in with a sprint triathlon. He went straight into Ironman, and then from there he went into double Ironman and some crazy stuff like that. But it kind of inspired me, and I was like, "Well, that's really cool." And I also remember reading an article years ago about Mark Allen and Dave Scott and that racing cone, the racing Kona. What do they call it? The Iron Wars or something?
Something like that, yeah.
And that was really inspiring. So it's kind of like, I could do all that. But there was a big issue that swimming was never in my armory of things to do. So I was doing some running, I was doing some biking, I was time trialing, I'd done adventure racing, and then I discovered the first first race I did was the Richmond Duathlon.
Oh yeah,
Richmond Park. I think I did it the first or the second year that they ran it, and that was kind of. I figured I could run 5-10K. I could do the biking. So how hard could it be putting them together? And I found out it was actually quite a lot harder than just running and biking.
Yeah. Well, you'll have been, with all the background that you've had, especially with the multi-sport sort of side of it as well, it would have stood you in good stead, wouldn't it, to go into something?
Definitely. I mean, I wasn't at the front of the pack, but I certainly was pleased with my time, and it kind of ignited the fire of what's possible. What could I do? What's the next piece? I'd love to do that again. So I'll try another race. And then I was talking to my brother, and he was telling me about this age group thing, and I was like, "Well, that sounds cool, but what is it?" So I found out a little bit more about it, and I wasn't part of a club or anything at the time. I was just doing it on my Todd. And
how did you find out about it, Andy?
My brother, I was talking to my brother about it. He was talking about some people in his club. He was a member of Bristol District Triathlon, and he was saying, some people in his had done the age group thing, and I was like, tell me about it. And it sounded really cool, and it was like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to wear a GB kit and stand on a start line? And that sounds really awesome. So I started finding out about it. And then found there was I think Oulton Park was my first attempt at qualifying, and I was well short, but not short enough to be like, that's never going to happen.
Discouraged. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like,
Was that
oh
was that triathlon then, or was it
no, it
duathlon?
was duathlon. Yeah, so I'd gone. I'm not. I decided I couldn't swim, so it was going to have to be duathlons.
Yeah, but
Um,
that, and I always say this every episode, and people must get sick of me saying it, but that's the beauty of multisport, because there's so many different things for everybody. Like there's obviously triathlon, duathlon, aquabike, aquathon, isn't there?
yeah,
If you don't like one
totally.
of the three, you can
Yeah,
do the others. So there's nothing, you know,
and you've got that range of distance as well. So it's like,
absolutely. It's all just geared up for everybody, isn't it?
yeah, massively. It's such an inclusive sport
Yeah,
because of that, I think. So
yeah, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was. I did a race with my brother. I did the what was it called? It was in the Lake District anyway, and I did a relay with my brother. I did the bike bit,
Mm,
um, and he did the swim and the run. And that was a really great experience, and that was the first time that I'd really experienced the triathlon crowd. And I,
sure.
I can still remember riding. I guess maybe because I knew the area. I'd not done the swim, and didn't have to do the run, so I was probably pushing the bike a little bit, and I was riding quite to the front of the pack, and I was overtaking people, and everybody I was overtaking was like, "Go on, mate, come on, that's great, you're doing fantastic." And it was like, in cycling, you overtake someone, and they
Yeah.
kind of they look at you, and it's kind of, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
very, it was very
cycling's
different.
a bit different, isn't it? Different dynamics.
Different mindset, different way of being. But to have competitors cheering you on was just like, this is brilliant, and the whole vibe was thing. So that kind of inspired me a bit more. Um, and then I think I did a couple of races, and then I did the qualifying race up on Tyneside. It's not done anymore. But that was a qualifying race, and I remember going up there, and it was just the worst conditions. It was wet, it was
What,
windy.
what year was that, Andy? And can you remember where it was?
It was. I think it was Sunderland.
Was it?
I can't remember. I really can't remember, but it was Sunderland or up that way.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a city centre course, and it was kind of like loops round roundabouts and up and down the side of the river.
Was it
Uh,
drafting?
no, no, it was standard distance
Oh,
non-draft
was it? Yeah, yeah.
one, yeah. Um, and yeah, I think I put it in my email actually. So just have a quick
Was it
look.
Stockton?
Stockton, yeah, Stockton on Tees. That was
Yeah,
it.
because
Yeah,
I did the sprint a couple of times, uh,
yeah. But
and
they don't do it anymore, which is a
I
shame.
know it is such a shame because it was such a good event. Well, I'm from Stockton originally,
Right.
so I'd go home and do the event and
Yeah.
family and stuff. But it was such a good event, and I don't understand why they've stopped doing it, to be honest.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, it was Stockton. That's right. And it was
but
just
you're
like
right, it was quite technical, wasn't it? With the
it was
roundabout.
technical, and it was windy, and it was wet, and it was just like one of those. But I just remember having this fantastic, and I can remember the finish because there was a guy like on the second 5K loop, he was getting closer and closer, and I was just like, "You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it." I was just like sprinting for the finish line, held him off, and it turns out he was the same age group as me,
Right.
and I got the qualification spot.
Oh,
I was like
wow.
qualifier
And at
or
the time, you wouldn't have known how important that was.
no, I was just like the red mist of competition
Which,
had come
which,
down.
yeah, which just goes to show, how, you should always try and sprint the end if you can.
Yeah, yeah. If there's someone near you, go for it.
Yeah.
Push on. So
Cool.
yeah,
So that was your first qualification for a standard race.
yeah,
Where was
yeah.
that at? Where was your standard?
Well, it ended up being a Vies. It was going to be in Holland, where they do the 70.3. I can't remember what the place is called now.
Hmm.
But it was going to be in Holland, and then COVID happened, and it got postponed and postponed and postponed, and they rescheduled it for Avies in Spain in 21, I think it was.
Cool. So how did that go?
It went really well. I mean, I got there and I just had no idea what to expect. It was just, traveled over there. I went with the Nirvana package because I figured that was easy life.
Yeah, and one of my teammates who I raced with yesterday, he's just qualified. He was on Amp Next Gen, Jerry Moss, and he's just qualified. And we were like discussing because he's qualified for Poland next year,
Yeah,
and we were discussing about the packages and what you should do. And I think it's generally it's quite expensive, isn't it, Nirvana? And
It is.
compared to what you can do yourself. But I
Yeah.
think anybody going over for the first time, it's probably a really good, if you can afford it, it's a really good way of doing it because it takes a
Yeah.
lot of the stress out. And this is what I said to Jerry, if you want a stress-free first experience, I said it's probably the way to go.
Yeah, I'd agree. As you say, it takes all the stress out. You're traveling with other GBT members, so you get to meet folks
Yeah,
straight away,
yeah,
which is amazing. And any of the age group events, that camaraderie and the team spirit is just brilliant.
yeah,
And but yeah, you're in hotels that are full of other triathletes or duathletes, and there for the same thing, and you kind of it takes the stress and the pressure away.
yeah,
When you've done a few of them, you perhaps think, well, maybe I could do it myself or do it differently. And I've now got a camper van, so I drive over if it's in Europe anyway. So
yeah. Well,
um,
that's even better, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, cool,
uh,
good. So it was a good experience. You got your GB kit through the post, and
got
you
the
were great.
GB kit. Yeah. Took all the photographs of
Yeah,
me and my GB kit, stuck them on social media, and I was just pinching myself.
yeah,
And even then, yeah, I got to the start line, and this is, we were talking at the beginning about imposter syndrome, and that was I very nearly didn't even make that start line 2 weeks before. I was in complete crisis of who am I to think that I should be going here? How dare I even prepare to
So
pretend to be it?
how did that sort of come about?
Just I was just you start doing all the preparation, you start looking at your training piece and thinking, oh, maybe I'm not quite there, and you have one or two bad events or
Mm.
bad runs, bad sessions, and I just started to doubt myself and started to think, well, perhaps I'm not good enough, and perhaps I shouldn't have got the qualification. I mean, it's ridiculous when you look at the facts and the figures. It's like, well, yeah, I qualified and I got the qualification place. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, it just kind of built from that and turned into actually I'm not going to go, and I very nearly pulled the plug on the whole experience in 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
was
just
there
was
an underlying fear then? What was the issue? What was
I was going to look stupid. I was going to let the team down. I was going to, I shouldn't be wearing the GB kit.
Yeah.
I'd created a whole list of fears in my head that were just, they're not real, but I totally created this list of fears in my head. I can remember it because I wrote them all down in the end. I mean, that was part of how I got past it, was I just wrote them all down, and then was just like, well, what do I need to do about this? What do I need to do about that? And people were going to laugh at me because my bike wasn't top of the range bike, and it's like, well, it doesn't really, it's not about the bike. It's,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the bikes make a difference, of course they do, but
Mm.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I went through this crazy process of almost pulling the plug, and then like, no, I'm going to do it, and everyone was like, oh, you must be so excited, and I'd be there nodding, thinking, no, I'm absolutely
Yeah,
terrified.
yeah, yeah. Putting a brave face on.
Yeah, smile and wave. But I got there, travelled down, flew out from Gatwick, and then got to the start line. And I can remember, that walking down to the start line first thing in the morning, with a surprising calm, chatting to an American. There was an American guy in the hotel who was also competing, and we walked down and we were just chatting to each other on the way down, and kind of got to the transition point, put the bikes in, set ourselves up, got to the start line, and was just standing there on the start line, um, chatting to people, that other British athletes that we'd met during the lead up to it, sitting there chatting away, and then they called us, and it's like, okay, this is it, here we go. And I still remember looking down and seeing my name in the GB kit and just going, wow, I'm here. This is happening.
Take it all
Um,
in.
yeah, and then Hooter goes off, and that's it. You're racing, and then it's almost just another race.
Yeah.
Um, till you come down the blue carpet at the end, and then it's not another race.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because I reckon that most people who haven't done age group before have that they go through that phase because
Yeah,
how you've never done it before, so you don't know what to expect, you don't know what the levels are like, you don't know anything. So I don't really think that it's unrealistic that you have all those issues that you've had and the thoughts that you brought and manifested in your own head. I don't,
mm,
I think most people, if they're really honest, they would probably say, yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly how I felt.
yeah,
Maybe they wouldn't describe it as imposter syndrome, but they probably doubted themselves about their
yeah,
ability.
yeah.
Because
And I think that it is part of the process, but
mm,
it's when it becomes
yeah,
bigger than Of course, we get nervous. We care. If
yeah,
we didn't care about it, we wouldn't get nervous. But
yeah, yeah. I think there's a certain amount of nerves that you take into every race. Doesn't matter
yeah,
how big or how small it is. If you haven't got those nerves, then you know what you're doing on the start line for one
yeah,
thing. You
yeah.
need a bit to get you going, don't you? You need that. You don't need too much, but you do need
No,
a bit to because you care,
and
like you've just said, you care.
that's it. It's getting that balance of
Yeah,
sort of excited enough, but not
yeah,
overphased by it.
yeah.
But yeah, if I took up to a start line with no nerves, I'd be
Yeah,
probably not doing very good races, I think.
yeah. I think because my wife she's new to it all racing wise for age group, and again she went through the same thing about
Mm.
was she good enough, didn't want to come last sort of thing,
Yeah,
and the race and this that and the other, and I said look and I'd heard this analogy. It's not my analogy, but it was an analogy I heard on a podcast, and they were talking about the mental game, and he was saying about it's like a plank. You'd walk on a plank on the floor and you'd have no problem.
yeah,
Put it up 10 foot in the air and then it becomes an issue. It's
yeah,
still the same plank.
yeah, exactly.
And this is how we build these things up, isn't it?
Yeah,
You do a normal race and you smash it. You go and do a similar sort of race where it's a little bit bigger or the biggest one
yeah,
you're going to do. It's that plank up in the air, isn't it? And it's like we
yeah,
build
exactly.
it up. And the key is what you've just said there, and that's what made me think about this, is that you just have to, once you start, think of it as a normal race, forget about everything else, and just go
Yeah,
and do your race. That's the
yeah,
hardest bit, I think, to do, isn't it?
yeah. It is, and if you can get yourself onto the start line in with that mindset of it's okay, well, and that was one of the things that I ended up doing, and I do in races since. It's like, well, okay, what have I done to get here? Have I done my sessions? Yes. Have I,
Yeah,
am I fit? Yes. Am I injured? No. Okay, well, I've done all that. Do I have a plan? Yep. Okay, let's put the plan into action and see what happens.
yeah,
Rather than, because that takes the pressure away from I'm third, I'm second, and of
yeah.
course that stuff matters, and I want to be,
Of
I want
course,
to
everybody
be,
does, don't
but if I focus just on that, it causes too much pressure for me. Whereas if I focus on the stuff that I can do, and it's just a race, like you say, you're walking along the plank, and it's 10 foot up in the air, but it's just one step in front of the other.
they? Absolutely. Yeah. Control the controllables.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah. Now, it's a fascinating part of racing, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I I work as a coach for leadership and performance in organisations, but it's something that people don't invest in, and people think a lot about, well, do you know what? I'll spend 10 grand on a new bike, but actually I won't go and invest in getting a sensible plan to help me deal with this
Yeah.
and structure it, or I'll get some new shoes, but don't think about the mental game. And it's like, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn up and I'm going to race as hard as I can. And it's like, well, what does that mean? But if you can actually break it down and put it into a really structured way of thinking about it, it's like, well, what is my plan? What are my goals? What
Yeah.
are those things that I can control?
Yeah.
And then actually, if I do all of that and come away in fourth place, but I've done everything that I could and had the best race I could have, I've
Mm.
got fourth place.
Yeah. You're a winner as well, anyway, aren't you? There,
Yeah,
you've done that.
you've
Yeah.
delivered your plan, and
Yeah.
there were three faster athletes on the course.
Yeah.
That's
And you
not
can't
that's not down to you.
you can't control that.
No.
No.
So
Yeah, it's just fascinating, I think, how we probably overanalyze sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, mental. I think it it can be 90% mental as well if you let it be.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember it wasn't a triathlon. It was just a 10K race, and it was just after I'd moved to York and joined a new running club, and had had a couple of decent results, and then I hadn't even planned to do it. I was just like, oh, I'll just turn up on the night and do it, kind of one of those races. And I got to the start line, and I was just in a complete like, oh my god, everyone's going to expect me to do really well, and I've not trained properly, and all of this stuff. And my mate just walked up and went, well, you're here, Andy. You might as well run. And it was just like, yeah, you're right. Do you know what? Stop
Yeah.
thinking it.
Yeah. And I think I always like when people overthink things at our club and they get stressed, I said, nobody cares.
No.
They don't. Nobody cares.
In
Just go
fact, most of
for
the
it.
people on the start line are thinking exactly the same stuff
Yeah.
that you are. So,
Yeah. And they're that busy thinking about themselves. Like,
yeah.
who cares? And the people
Yeah.
that do care, they want to see you do well anyway.
Exactly.
That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, nobody cares. They're too busy thinking about themselves. Don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up.
Yeah, totally.
So what happened next then after you how did you do in Avils?
I think I came in 18th in age group and eighth Brit home, so kind of mid pack, and I was really happy with it.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
crossed the finish line, totally blown away by the emotions of it, and just it was just a fantastic experience. And definitely, it was like, I want more. I want
Yeah.
more of this.
That's
Um,
generally the response, isn't it, after people
yeah,
have done
yeah,
it. Oh well, this is it. This is what I want to do. Yeah, I really
yeah,
enjoyed it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's around the there's so much to it. There's the camaraderie of the team. There's the meeting the people, the places you go to, the whole setup, the fact that you're wearing GB kit. There's just so much that it becomes this thing of I want to stay with this. I want to keep doing it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
so yeah. So I think what happened after that, I then carried on, and I qualified. What was the next one I qualified for? So I did this year. I had a bit of a break from the age group stuff, and then qualified in 2003 for the middle distance duathlons at Ulsdorf, and also the standard distance triathlon at Vichy this year.
Okay.
So after Avies and the duathlon, I was like, oh, actually, all my mates are swimming, and that would be a cool challenge. So I took on that challenge of learning to swim, and went to the club sessions.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are you part of a club now then?
Yeah, so part of York Triathlon Club.
Right.
I went down to the club sessions on a Wednesday. Tried to learn to swim myself, YouTube videos and go down the pool, and that didn't really work. So went to the club sessions, and slowly moved up through the lanes. Started off in the beginner's lane, and slowly moved up through the lanes and got better and better. So moving on, I was just saying it was quite a nice process to go through, because when you get to a level with your running and your biking, you can improve, but it takes a lot more. Whereas to start as a kind of average swimmer and then start to move up, you see the gains quite quickly, and it was really rewarding to do that. And then my coaches were like, well, you could probably come out of the swims mid pack, and why don't you give it a try? And it was like, oh, why not give it a try? So my first triathlon was Leeds,
All right. Yeah.
down at Round Park.
Yeah.
Um,
What year was that? Was that?
I think it was the last time they ran it.
Was that?
So it would have been 22.
I don't know whether I did that one actually. Because that was the
Yeah, it
last
would have been 22. Yeah.
standard I did.
Um,
Was the run was in Round Park?
yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah. 3 laps.
Tough old run, that one, eh?
It is lumpy as well. Surprising, the whole thing was surprisingly lumpy, actually.
I'd done them previously. I'd done because they changed it. The first iteration, you started around here and you finished in Leeds, and the transition was down in Leeds, and they'd messed it up because all the kit was back up in Roundhay Park. So
Right.
he was waiting for the kit because they couldn't get it down fast enough. So that didn't work. So they changed it from that to transition was down in the city centre. So that was better. And then the third one, it was all in round. But it was
Yeah.
but the run down into the city was really nice because it was all downhill. Whereas on that last one, it was like you were up and down, you were up and down. It was really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. Yeah. There were a couple of grindy hills on it.
Yeah.
But that was my first experience of a mass start, water start, and that was open water swimming and the first experience of that, and it was quite. I found it massively intimidating actually, and
Had you done much
struggled.
before that then?
Only local in the local lake. Tried a couple of times, but not really. But even if you've done open water swimming, then nothing sets you up for a jump off the pontoon into the water. Hooter goes off and off we all go. It's a very different experience, I think.
Oh, 100%.
But I got around the swim and was delighted to get out of the swim. I'm sure there's a few triathletes who can relate to that. And then just got on the bike and run and absolutely loved it and just felt better and better as the race went on. And then did local one at Allerthorpe Lake, which was great. And again, that was another more experience of open water swimming in a big pack, but felt more settled with it. And then qualified at Castle Howard, the Castle Howard event that was where they had to cancel the bike.
All right.
The weather was atrocious, and the course was flooded out. And yeah, I mean, it was the right decision to cancel the bike, but there was doubt as to whether it was going to be a qualification, and so we had to wait and see. But it was at the end of the season, so they were like, yeah, it stands as a qualification. So yeah, that was my qualification into this year. Vichy. Yeah, so it was the first one I did this year. The first age group event this year was middle distance at Ulsdorf.
Yeah, and how did that?
That was brilliant. Absolutely loved that event, and that's kind of pushed me into thinking perhaps longer distance stuff is where I want to go. Sorry, my dog's just started snoring in the background. I hope
That's mine actually. And then I can hear it from downstairs.
Yeah. No, he's having a good old snore. He's a Beagle Lab cross.
Nice.
Yeah, it's lovely. So I went over to Ulsdorf, and that's a fantastic. I mean, it was really well organised. I'd driven over in my van, so I had that kind of staying slightly away from it, which suited me, of just being able to chill out when I needed to chill out, and then go in and meet everybody. And once you've got the idea of how the age group stuff works, and go in for the Parade of Nations and stuff, and meet folk, and then come back out and relax. So that was really good. And that I had a fab race on that one as well. Really strong run, amazing bike. Really enjoyed the bike. And then I came in, I think 11th. Yeah, 11th in age group, 4th Brit home, which I thought had pre-qualified me for next year, but it was only the top 10 that got pre-qualification, so I was slightly disappointed. But good race. Really enjoyed it. It was one of those where I came away thinking, actually, I couldn't really do much different on that one. That was a plan that went according to plan. It was good.
Good.
So and then Vichy, which was the European Championships. I got to that, and that was mad because it was. I arrived at that one in probably some of the best condition I've been in. I was absolutely fired up. I felt really strong. Everything in my training had gone brilliantly. I was kind of, I've got this. And, journey down there was fine. Arrived, everything set up, met folks, started, chatting to people. really went out and pre-rode the course, and there was a lovely long hill on the course, and I was just like, oh, this is made for me. I love this. So really excited about the whole event. Went for the Parade of Nations, chatting to people, all felt really good. And then was chatting. The sprint was on the Saturday, and the standard distance triathlon was on the Sunday. Olympic was on the Sunday, and people who'd done the sprint were starting to. There was people saying, "Oh, the water's quite cold." It's kind of, and before we'd gone out there, all the conversations have been around, well, will it be a wetsuit swim because it's really hot? And suddenly the conversations were like, oh, the water's really cold. So wetsuits on, got down to the start, set up everything, was really ready to go. And it was a pontoon start. So you're on the pontoon, into the water, hooter goes, and off we went. And I set out on that, started swimming, felt okay, and I think the adrenaline kicked in and got me through, but the water it was like 16 degrees or something like that. It was pretty Baltic, and Baltic for me. I know some people going crazy swimming, a lot colder, but 16 for me is, that's my limits really.
I'm a cold swimmer at all. It's got to be June, July before I'll get in the water.
Yeah. So I was doing okay, and it was kind of mid-pack and trying to settle, and then just started to have a panic attack and couldn't get my breath, and was just really starting to not be able to breathe. So I kind of drifted out of the back of the pack, got myself sorted, started swimming again, got back into it, started to have the panic attack, hadn't gone, and came back again. Then my goggles got knocked off, and I was just like, oh my God, what's going on here? And there was then my learning from this was the rescue boat, obviously seeing that I was possibly not in a good space. So they came up behind me and they said, are you okay? And I said, no, I can't breathe. Which, if you say that to a rescue boat, that's your race over, because the next thing I knew was I was sat on the bottom of the rescue boat. They just hoisted me out of the water, and it was a did not finish. If
you'd have responded differently, do you think you could have carried on eventually and got through it? I mean, you'll never know, obviously, but
I don't know. I mean, it was a pretty bad panic attack, and by the time they got me to the side, my core temperature was down, and I ended up in the med tent. So I don't know. I might have been able to recover it if I could have breaststroked for 100 meters or something, or swam with my head out the water and just. But you start to do that. My race is over. The pack's gone. I'm not going to get the position. It doesn't matter how good my bike is now. I'm not going to, and all of that stuff was in your head. And and when you have a panic attack and it's that bad, you're not thinking. Those logical thoughts are there. So I was pulled out, put on the side, team manager, and that's you can't fault. This is where the team spirit comes in. There was a guy there who had done the sprint, who came over and was like, "You all right, mate? I'll go and get the team manager." Went off and got the team manager, and he checked in on me later as well. This guy Keith, and it's like, there was just this big support for you, even though it was the worst time. So that was Vichy over in 2 minutes.
Well, I think,
but
like a lot of things, isn't it? You've got to try and take the positives from it, and also learn from it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I sat down afterwards, and don't get me wrong, I was absolutely devastated. I think I was in tears at one point, and I think the people in the rescue boat had to put up with some fairly interesting language, directed mostly at myself. But it was that, there was a lot of emotions there. But actually, when I sat down and talked with my coach and talked with my friends and just reflected on it, really, it was that bit about, actually, I got there in the best shape I've done. I was happy that I qualified, and my qualification race was good. I was in top form. I'd done everything I could. I just had a panic attack, and I've swum in colder water and everything, and not had panic attacks. I've been in, it just happened. And I was on a British Triathlon coach course the other day, and there was a few people there going, yeah, 30 races, and then I had a panic attack. It's like you don't know when it's going to come, and it may never come, and hopefully it doesn't for most people. But it definitely finished my race off. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
not to a point that I don't want to compete. It's like I'm already thinking about what my next races are and where I'm going with it. So yeah.
yeah. Well, let's hope it was just a blip. And I think it's quite a common, not just for when you're competing in age group, it's quite a common thing for open water swimming, and
Yeah,
just go training sometimes. I mean, I've been training with people and they've got out and they've had a panic attack, and it's not been a race, it's just there's no explanation for it
no,
really.
no, it's just the body responding to cold water in a special way. And when you train, you can sometimes acclimatize. I mean, this was difficult because you couldn't get into the water before. It was into the water,
I
off you
think
go.
that's for me. I think that's one of the biggest things that they need to look at and address because there should be some form of, and I know it's difficult, but there should be some form of acclimatization that allows you to go in and have even if you're just in and out, get
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, we were stood on that podium for 5 minutes before they
Yeah,
before they let us into the water. They could have let us into the water perhaps at 4 minutes, and then we could have had a minute of getting used to it and
yeah.
gone, blimey, this is cold.
I think it's
But
something that needs to be addressed. I know when I was over in Australia, they allowed us to do that. We could go in the water, have a little bit of a swim, and then come back and then they started putting us in
yeah,
section, and it wasn't a big deal. So I don't see
yeah,
why it can't be done at races.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that was Vichy over for me.
Well,
Um,
like I say, it's about like obviously has affected you, but affected you in a good way because you want to continue and get past it and uh
yeah,
and yeah, good,
yeah. I came back from Vichy full of, I had the form that I'd had, and ended up setting a PB, a 5K PB that was 10 years old, and I beat that on a night. So that there was a lot of good that came out of it because it was my fitness hadn't disappeared in the panic attack and all of that, and now I'm building up and setting up for next year and looking at my big goals for next year. Um,
cool,
so
good, good, yeah. Um, well, I think that's the best way of looking at it, isn't it? Like we said, and it's just go on from there. We always have these that happen in
yeah,
sport life, and it's how you deal with them and how you
yeah,
process. You can process it in a positive way and learn from it, which is the best way to deal with it instead of
yeah.
dwelling.
And I do think if I'd gone into the race solely focused on I want to be on the podium or I want this time or whatever, then that would have been harder to overcome. But because I went into the race thinking, yes, I want these things, but actually the stuff that's going to give me that is smooth transition, decent bike leg, and I knew that I could do. I'd done all of what I could do. I didn't get to demonstrate it, unfortunately, but
Yeah,
I was comfortable with that. So it was kind of, well, I did everything I could do, and I was unlucky to have a panic attack.
yeah,
I could have had a flat tire or a derailleur gone or crashed or
absolutely, yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It just happened to be one of those things that was out of my control. So
But going forward, you've got to that level of fitness once where you were happy and you know you can go and do that again, can't you? Because you've done it.
yeah,
You know where you
really,
need to be. You know the process to get there, so it's just replicating that process, isn't it, really?
yeah, yeah, totally.
What's next then? What have you qualified for next year?
So next year I have qualification for Pontevedra um, and Zofingen. So the long distance duathlon and standard distance duathlon at Pontevedra.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Well, I shall see you at Pontevedra, hopefully, because well, actually, I
Excellent.
probably won't because I've qualified for the cross. Um,
Well, I've got to. That's my kind of one of my maybes for next year is if I can get to. I think there's an Xterra event down at in February that still allows you to qualify for
oh,
Pontevedra Cross.
right.
So I'm thinking I might, because I'm there anyway. So
Yeah.
one bike, two bikes, might as well go. Might as well get the most out of the GB kit.
Yeah. Well, if you're there, then I'll see you. I'll see you
Yeah,
there. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, cool. Right. Well, it's a great story. I mean, not without its, ups and downs as they all are. Everybody
yeah,
has. And that mental side's fascinating. I think it's a lesson for everybody listening, to try and overcome, and it does
yeah,
it to us all. Uh,
yeah.
well,
I'd say pay attention to it up front. Look at it up front is the way to deal with it, and look at what could go wrong. What can you do about it? What are the facts? And really challenge that stuff. But really invest in it rather than just hoping it'll be all right.
yeah. And I do think there's loads and loads of information now out there. I mean, I listen to quite a few podcasts about the mental side, and
Yeah,
a lot of the multi-sport triathlon podcasts, they always have specialists on there talking about it. We've had a couple on this podcast. Um, so there's loads of information you can go and educate yourself of what you need to do and how you can deal with these issues when they come up. So
yeah,
I'd definitely
yeah,
recommend
totally.
try and get your mental game as strong as it can be.
Yeah,
Because it just
yeah,
is another piece of your armory, isn't it, really?
yeah, totally. And I think everybody feels it. Everybody has it, as we were saying. It's like you have those nerves, but how you utilize them and challenge them can make a huge difference. So yeah,
Cool. Right, we'll move on to the quick fire questions. The first one is, told me you're part of a club, York Tri. Now,
yeah,
you coached other than coaching in the club? Have you ever had a personal coach?
yes, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
you found like a big difference since you've gone down that route?
Yeah, it's having someone making those decisions for you. You're not guessing it. And there is loads of information you can buy your coach packages off the internet, but actually to have working one to one with a coach who gets to understand how you are and how you race and how you train, and then being able to adjust the sessions has just made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. And what's a week of training look like for you at the moment then? I know we're on the off season now pretty much.
Yeah. So at the moment, it's building um, looking at FTP build and base and doing some distance endurance work really. So Monday's usually a rest day. Tuesday's a bike session, maybe a swim. Um, Wednesday run, Thursday bike, Friday run, and then I'll do the longer stuff at the weekend. Either outside, which is my preference, or inside on the turbo or the treadmill, which is it's good for your resilience if nothing else.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's weather dependent, isn't it, this time of year as well?
It is, and sometimes it's just joyous to get out and ride your bike outside, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Yeah. What's your favorite bit of kit?
Ooh, probably my bike.
Yeah, that's the
I
most popular.
bought it. Yeah, I think. Yeah, probably my bike. I had a bike fit with Matt Bottrell.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, last year, and it's transformed it, and I just love riding that bike. You get
What,
on it, it feels fast. Um,
what
so,
bike have you
sorry, what
got?
was that?
What bike have you got?
Canyon Speed Max.
Yeah,
Um,
this bike.
yeah, really nice, really nice.
Did
But,
did he change much?
yeah, loads. And I
Do you?
went in thinking went in thinking my position was pretty good, and you look at the before and afters, and new front end, new helmet, but just changed how the bike feels and how I feel on the bike, and it handles better. And it was interesting. I did a 10-mile time trial that I'd done pre and post the bike fit, and the conditions. I mean, there's always variables, but they were pretty. It was the same course, and it was pretty similar conditions, and I was 45 seconds, 50 seconds quicker over 10 miles after the bike fit, So yeah, I think if I was going to say to someone, what would you invest in? Mental stuff and a bike fit.
It's funny, one of the lads that was on the podcast, Simon Hall, he's got a YouTube channel and he's just had a fit with Matt Bottrell. Really fascinating to watch as well.
Yeah.
His different physiques. Yeah.
Yeah.
On to
Matt's just amazing. It's like it was a geek out of 3 or 4 hours at Matt's place, and it was just like, oh, it's fabulous.
well, anybody interested in seeing what Matt gets up to and how he does it, head over to Simon's YouTube channel because it's yeah, fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
What resources do you use to help you with? I know you've got a coach, but what resources do you use to help with your multi-sport events and things?
So Training Peaks is the big one. That's probably the coach and that and Training Peaks are probably the two main pieces. Make sure you got your nutrition covered. Is one of the bits, and what else? That's probably the main stuff. I think leaning into as much support as you can get from your club and colleagues and friends as well. That's probably a resource that people don't lean into enough.
Yeah, people definitely. Yeah. And finally, then, what are your short and your long-term goals? Well, you've already probably told us about your short ones, racing next year.
Yeah, so I think the immediate ones are the Pontevedra standard and possibly the cross, and then Zoffingen's the big challenging one. It's a massive step up in distance for me, but I'm really excited about that. And then off the back of that, we've got the York Marathon a couple of months after that, which is I'm hoping to get a PB, use all the fitness from Zoffingen, recover well, and then see if I can hit a PB on that. And then longer term, 70.3s. I guess the big thing would be the age group 70.3 champs to feature in that.
Yeah,
and I'd love to hit the podium on one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a goal, isn't it? Goal to have.
Yeah,
Keep
totally.
the
Yeah,
consistency going and keep the training going, keep the love of the sport going. And, it might not be this year, next year, year after, but if you've got that mindset and the goal, then it's achievable, isn't it? I think.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it keeps you going. When you're doing those dull sessions on the turbo or out in the cold and the rain, it's having that. Yeah, this is actually getting me to whatever goal it is that I'm after. Really helps.
And I think on the reverse side, when you're at the start line and you think about retrospectively what you've done, to get you there, the cold, long sessions and the hard work that you've put in, it's a great tool to have to reflect, isn't it? And think, well, yeah, I'm ready.
Definitely, yeah. I've done everything I can, and those sessions where you're shouting at your coach because he's set some crazy FTP thing and you hate him, but you know that they're working, and you suddenly remember all of those and think, yeah, that's what got me here.
Well, that's brilliant. It was lovely to chat to you. Fantastic story. I'm sure you've inspired and got people thinking about the mindset and things.
I hope so, yeah.
No two ways about it. So thank you ever so much for that and sharing. Like I said at the beginning of the pod, really do appreciate your time for coming on. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Cheers.
Well, thanks once again for coming on the podcast, Andy, and being so candid by sharing your experiences with your mental health issues while you've been training and racing. I'm sure that it'll help others out there that have experienced the same issue or haven't yet but may do in the future, and they can reflect on your journey and see how you've dealt with it, and inspired that you haven't give up, you're going to carry on, and already qualified for 2025 at Pontevedra, and you're going to go and do it all over again. So as I said in the pod, good luck with it all, and hopefully we might meet up in Pontevedra. So that's it for another episode. Thank you for taking your time to give us a listen. Much appreciated. Please get those votes in. Help our nomination. You have a great new year, and your training kicks off from January the 1st, if you're not too hungover. And I hope 2025 is a great year for you all. So thanks for all the support in 2024, and we shall see you on the other side. And don't forget, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.